Hello, everyone. We are going to get started in just a minute here. We're going to give a couple minutes for everyone to get into the webinar. We heard that the keynote speech was amazing, so excited for everyone. Um, all right.
Okay.
I think we'll go ahead and get started. Yeah. All right.
All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Harmony Harvell.
And I am Larkin O'Leary.
We are just two moms, and we're from Common Ground Society, we go to local schools and community events, and we present about inclusion and acceptance while also supporting our local disability community. So here's a little information about our journey so that you can get some understanding about the experiences families might have had.
And here we go. So I am Larkin O'Leary. I've taught a variety of grades ranging from preschool to 8th grade. I love seeing all of the highs in the chat. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. I'm so happy you are all here. Here we go. So I've taught a variety of grades ranging from preschool to 8th grade. I have been a credentialed teacher for 20 years now.
Nice.
I know. Also, that makes me old. And I've wanted to be a teacher since 4th grade. You see, up until 4th grade, I had a hard time in school. I was sent to the principal's office numerous times and had that infamous daily note home. In 4th grade, I had a teacher, Mrs. Fisher, who took the time to get to know me. She sat with me and created a connection with me. She had lunch with me, helped me with my work, and just spent a few minutes each day letting me know that I was cared about in school. She didn't see me as that kid, but rather one who just needed a little extra help to get back on track. I remember her sitting down with my parents and me and telling us that we should try some tutoring to get a handle on what I now believe was my undiagnosed ADHD. So we took her advice and got some help. Since those tutoring sessions, I received great grades, enjoyed school, and I set out to help kids the way that she helped me. When I was in 6th grade, Mrs. Fisher passed away from cancer, but before she did, I made a promise to her that I would be the best teacher that I could be, and that's what I set out to do. Little did I know the incredible impact her life had on mine.
So I actually never intended to be in education. It was a complete coincidence. I was taking a child development class at the Santa Rosa Junior College under the assumption, I need this knowledge someday for my future parenthood. So I was in my child development class, and an AmeriCorps recruit came to explain to me that I could get some college paid for and I could help kids after school in low income areas around Santa Rosa. So that sounded pretty good to me. I signed up. So I was at the school I was assigned, and on that first day, young 20-year-old self, was left alone with 25 fourth graders who were, we can say, having a moment. So unexperienced as I was, I stood on a table, got their attention, engaged in activity, and like I said, my 20-year-old young self, Dead Poet Society moment with fourth graders. So a teacher walked by as I was doing that, and instead of getting in trouble, he said, "You should really be a teacher." And that's just what I did. So 2 years in AmeriCorps, I did student teaching, and I got my first teaching assignment actually at the same school where I stayed for a decade. And now, 20 years later, after a teaching career, I'm now an elementary school principal.
So I have two children, a 5-year-old named June Bell and a 10-year-old named James. And while June Bell is part pterodactyl, part Tasmanian devil, she's considered neurotypical. And James is a sassy, fun-loving jokester who happens to have Down syndrome. Down syndrome is a chromosomal anomaly where there are 3 copies of the 21st chromosome instead of 2. There's actually 3 types of Down syndrome. I didn't know that before having James. James has the most common type, which is trisomy 21.
So I'm the proud mom of 2 little humans, 9-year-old neurodiverse August and 6-year-old neurotypical Lucille. So August is sweet and fun and loving. He loves to sing. And if you're close to him, he will actually assign a song just for you.
It's true.
I know. August rides horses and he prefers when he can make them trot. And part of who August is that he has an expressive speech delay. He has an intellectual disability and he's on the autism spectrum. It makes him extra wonderful in so many different ways. So I never knew or had even heard about autism until my son was diagnosed with it, but I really like this three-part definition in this graphic. So people with autism have differences in behavior or how they interact with the world around them, often due to how their sensory systems interprets things, differences in socializations, and differences in communication. So you may have heard of the autism spectrum, and many people think of that as people having more or less autism. However, really, the autism spectrum means that autistic people are impacted differently in different areas of their lives. So some people with autism might need a lot of support with regulating their sensory system, but don't have any trouble with communication. And some autistic people might find social cues very challenging, but not have sensory challenges. Everyone with autism is different.
So, since having James and August, our perspective on just about everything has changed and been informed by their needs and differences. And I describe our metamorphosis by my mantra, you don't know what you don't know until you know. So, let's learn. We believe that connection is key to inclusion. So, we're going to create a connection with you and our journey into our motherhood experiences, an experience that no one is ever really prepared for, especially when things turn out differently than expected. So, as a soon to be mom, my life was pretty normal. I did the typical baby showers, eating lots of ice cream, not being able to see my toes. We had planned our birth around the school year. My ex-husband is also a teacher. And so I had my birth plan and my post-birth plan. I was going to have my baby, and then I was going to return to full-time teaching in the fall, like all of my friends and colleagues had done. It was my passion and my first love, after all. Then we had James. Oop, there we go. Whoop. Then we had James. It was a chaotic birth that I'll spare you the details, but I can liken it to a scene in Beauty and the Beast where they begin singing Be Our Guest. Everything around me was emotion, and James Allen O'Leary entered this world on St. Patrick's Day via emergency C-section with a tiny little red tuft of hair. I know he's super cute. I bet you're saying "aw" right now. I can hear it. And the doctors told me to pull back my shirt and get ready for some skin to skin. Only he never came. James let out one cry, and that was it. So they rushed him off to the NICU with my dazed husband following, and I laid on the table wondering what the heck happened. I didn't eat the cheese or lunch meat they warn you about. I didn't drink or smoke. And I even gave up caffeine 6 months before trying to get pregnant. And if you're a teacher, you understand, like that's a feat, right? So what was going on with my little guy? 3 hours later, I was finally wheeled in to meet my son. The doctors surrounded my husband and me as they told us the news. I'm sorry to say, it looks like James has some markers to indicate he has Down syndrome. And I like to make a note there that the first person to meet my son was apologizing to me for his existence. That was my entrance into motherhood. First is the large hole in his heart. He'll need to have open heart surgery, so we're not sure how soon, so we're taking him by ambulance to San Francisco right away. The doctor kept on talking, but I didn't hear a word he was saying. Down syndrome, heart issues, but he was only 6 days early. I did everything I was supposed to during that pregnancy and nothing I shouldn't. Clearly, he was wrong. Well, fast forward 10 years, 4 major surgeries, 27 other minor surgeries and procedures, hundreds of days in the hospital, countless doctors and therapy visits. And here we are. I hear the awe again. He's the best. He's adorable. He is alive and he's thriving and he's entered the educational world. Just as he was entering, I was sort of forced to take a break. With all the hospital stays, I ran out of sick days to use. My district was beyond supportive of my attempts to claw at my job, but there was just no way. Writing subplans from the PICU and the ER while my son was fighting for his life just became too overwhelming.
Sorry, but there's a comment.
I
He's
know.
so
It's true.
handsome.
He
Take
is.
it.
He's cute.
I
He's
know.
handsome. He's lovely. Yes. But now he's walking, he's running, he's signing, he's reading, he's doing math, he's talking up a storm, and he's definitely keeping his teachers on his toes, which I believe is genetic from me. He's thriving in school because his whole school believes in him. And I have the opportunity to reflect, learn, and grow. And that's just what I've been doing.
So alongside with Larkin, shortly after, I was given a beautiful baby shower as well with the pregnancy of the first baby in the immediate family, which was a big, big deal. I got all the love and attention from my family and work and friends. I knew we were having a boy, which is what I absolutely wished for. So I had a really successful pregnancy. It was complete with all the prenatal exams and assessments, and I passed them glowingly. Everything was looking good to go. And actually, even on this journey, my friend was having her challenges. And truthfully, I'll be honest, I said, shoo, I'm glad that's not me, just to be honest. I delivered on time, natural, no complications, and I just pushed my little heart out for a few, and he arrived. So August Nolan came into my world, and he was absolutely perfect.
You can say for the one too. Look at those cheeks, such a cutie.
So we lived in bliss for 18 months, and I received a diagnosis of an expressive speech delay after several trips to his pediatrician. Each time we would go, the question would be, how many words did he know? 10, 20, 30. And by the time they asked for 50, my husband and I would just look at each other and literally laugh. No, he knows 0 to 1 word, and it would regress back and forth. They sent him for a hearing assessment, which he passed with flying colors. And then finally, it's off to get a further assessment. And we went off to San Francisco, where we walked out with a doctor saying to us, you know, it's just not normal for a child to play independently like that. Your kid has autism. Well, I officially hated this man, and I don't think he realized what he did when he said to me, autism spectrum disorder. Disorder? My kid doesn't have a disorder. But I said, instead of saying anything, I took the business card, thought, what pill can I take? What can I do? I'm a teacher. Let's solve this. Got in the car and cried all the way home. With all August has on his list, expressive speech delay, autism spectrum, intellectual disability, he really is best known for kindness. He recently won the Be Kind Award at his school last month. He's known for his jokes on his AAC device because, I'm sorry, bathroom jokes are always funny.
Oh boy.
And his willingness to participate and try in all things.
So we do these presentations in the community in hopes that listening to our parent perspective we just shared, that you're able to understand that families may be coming to you with a wide range of experiences. So we are here to bridge the gap. We're going to tell you a little bit about our organization and then give you the tools to help you facilitate connection between students. While we're talking about our organization, you may feel free at any point to put questions in the chat. We may wait till the end to answer them, but if you want to put them in the chat, we'll be happy to answer them at the end. Nothing is off the table so long as it comes from a kind heart. We knew nothing about disabilities before having our kids, and well, here we are.
No. So our goal with Common Ground Society is to shift the narrative of our society to help our community see the strength that lies in our diversity. In doing this, our goal is to help create more accessible space for our families and people with disabilities. Using our vulnerability and our connection, we help people see that our kids with disabilities are simply just our kids. Kids that will turn into adults who are worthy of accessible communities. So from the day our lives were turned upside down to now, we know that support is strongly needed in Sonoma County for families and really across the nation, all families who have differences. So this is why Larkin, my dear sweet friend, co-founded Common Ground Society. She's my rock star. We are a place where parents can find families that have traveled on a similar path and are able to ask questions and find resources within our county. We want to let families know that they are not alone, despite sometimes feeling very much so with this life.
So how I found myself the executive director of a nonprofit from teacher is somewhat of a story. Due to my son's medical needs, I had to take leave and eventually resign from teaching. So I was thrilled, as you know, teaching is my first love. Thrilled when my son's preschool asked us to come in and do a presentation for World Down Syndrome Day. We did that presentation. That's the other co-founder there, Jessica, with her daughter, Annalise. The Press Democrat, which is our local newspaper, came and did a story on our presentation. presentation. And all of my teacher friends saw and asked us to come into their classrooms and present. You know how teachers like to exploit people. So just joking. Asked us to come in and do presentations, but there's too many classrooms. So we tried our hand at whole school assemblies, and lo and behold, it was a hit. And we worked all the way, that was 2018, worked all the way through the pandemic, turning some to virtual. But I'll tell you, we are so excited to be back in classrooms again. At the same time, we were looking for local support and families who are traveling down a similar path. Although my son has Down syndrome, and there's an incredible Down syndrome community here in Sonoma County and everywhere, I was going through something very different. My son had a lot of medical issues, and I just didn't feel like I fit in with the Down syndrome community as much as I did the families who had rare, one-of-a-kind diagnoses or medical complexities. So through that experience, I also found other friends who had kids that had various diagnoses, and they were feeling alone as they were walking this path. I wanted to create a space where everyone had someone and we were able to work together to understand the resources that were available to us. So I created a small Facebook group, which turned into small play dates. This was our very first play date that we had. Look at those tiny little muffins. And now here we are. In 2020, we incorporated into a 501c3 and developed our vision and mission statements. We have reached, this number is even larger. We even did a presentation today to a high school. We've reached so many different schools from Bend, Oregon to San Diego, spreading the good word of acceptance and inclusion. We focus on more than just Down syndrome, but a multitude of visible and invisible disabilities. We have 5 different elementary school presentations, 2 middle school presentations, and just developed a free high school presentation that we through a grant. So if you're interested in those types of presentations, reach out. We also present to colleges and community groups, such as this one tonight, talking about inclusive practices and mindset shifts around inclusion. And we present to California SELPA, Kaiser Grand Rounds, our county office of education, PTA groups, orthodontists, I say,
right.
anybody who will listen.
Oh, sorry, I forgot about the orthodontics.
That's a good one.
So support for local families means that we support anyone who's been thrown a hard left in parenting. We have people in our group whose children's diagnoses are common, like speech delays or autism, and even more rare diagnoses like Cornelia de Lange syndrome, 22QLL, 22,
11.2.
wait, I can do
You
it.
got it.
22Q11.2 deletion.
Yes.
See, I'm still working on it too. And the one that's challenging for me is Dravet. See, I'm working on 2, and even a few other diagnoses that I'm still working on pronouncing. Thank you for the kindness. We have different support groups listed on this page, as well as a welcome bag with letter designed to reassure families that they're not alone, and a bag to support families through their hospital stays. We have a grief basket that we give to families who've lost their loved ones with disabilities, and we're also working to develop our program further to support families. We believe that our community will never be fully supported unless our entire community knows how to support us. So here are some helpful tips to create a community of belonging right here. So prior to meeting the multitude of families who have kids with disabilities and disabled humans, we sat with our unconscious bias and believed the myth that people with insert whatever disability you want were insert the commonality that you are familiar among them. Here are a few examples of commonly held stereotypes about common disabilities, right? Autism, they don't make eye contact, the speech delay, not loving, not social. You haven't met my kid, just so you know, and so on. So the one thing that we've learned through all of this kind of one size fits all really is it's not true. No one size fits all approach. It just doesn't work. Each and every human is different regardless of the diagnoses, and connection is key to inclusion. Understanding who people really are and where they've been allows for meaningful inclusion.
And one thing we really like to note on this page is the non-speaking and nonverbal. Learning from disabled adults, and we have learned the difference between non-speaking and nonverbal. So my friend's daughter, Megan, she is very verbal, She's very verbal, but she does not use her voice to communicate. So in that term, she is non-speaking. Someone who is nonverbal doesn't make sounds using their voice, right? And so that's the difference. And then thinking about the fact that just because someone doesn't communicate the way you and I communicate or the way we're communicating, right, doesn't mean they don't understand everything you're saying. So we always encourage you to presume competence. Another important thing to talk about is language. Language matters. We talk about this euphemism treadmill that we are on when we're talking about someone who is disabled. We use the term we used to use the R word to describe people with intellectual disabilities. Well, that word got turned into a slur. And so then we started using the term special needs, right? To replace the R word. However, that word is starting to be turned into a slur, and we've heard from disabled adults, and we encourage you to follow disabled adults, read their works, learn from them, people living with lived experience. Super important when learning about disability culture. But the majority of people with disabilities that are adults talk about how the term special needs feels infantilizing. I say it right?
Yes, you did.
Yes, good.
Yes.
Infantilizing. And so we now use the term neurodivergent, right? But that word eventually will get on this treadmill and become a slur. So the best chance you have is to use the word disabled, because by dictionary definition, that's what it means. And even better than that, just learn their name.
Yeah.
Say hi. That's always helpful.
Yes.
We also like to talk about the difference between person first language and identity first language. So person first language is putting a person first. So someone in the Down syndrome community, the cerebral palsy community, they prefer person first language, meaning they're a person with Down syndrome versus a person, a Down syndrome person.
Right.
A person with cerebral palsy is a person with cerebral palsy, not a cerebral palsy person. Whereas many autistic adults overwhelmingly prefer the term autistic person. It's identity first language. They believe that they are not who they are without their label of autism. And so it is, they prefer that term. But just like with everything, everyone is different, and your best bet is to ask, and your even better best bet.
Yes.
Yep, that's a thing.
Yeah.
Is to learn their name and say hi. One last thing that we like to talk about is the way we talk about things. So I know that I had a really hard time, and this is something I've only recently understood. I don't even know if you know this since we've been presenting here, but we added this one here.
Okay.
Is when we talk about things, for example, when my daughter was learning how to use the toilet instead of diapers, I would say things to her like, oh, but you're a big girl. Big girls don't use diapers, right? But what does that do? That further perpetuates the stereotype that only little kids and babies use diapers. And that is what unknowingly we are further perpetuating the stereotype that people with diapers are babies, or people with disabilities should be treated like babies. And so if we can just think about that in our minds as we're talking to people and we're conversating, and now I've shifted my mindset and my voice to, well, you know how to use the toilet, so you don't need to use diapers.
Okay.
Everyone gets what they need, not everyone gets the same. I tried to tell my daughter that's our family motto, and she said, everyone gets what they want is the family motto. And she doesn't believe me that I'm correct, but it's fine.
Oh.
So we also want to remind, yes, she's a little too smart. But we also want to remind you that behavior is communication. When a parent or a caregiver of a child who has behavior issues, who may have behavior issues, they're oftentimes trying to communicate something that we're not understanding. And to be honest, when we take our kids places and we're not sure how things are going to go, we are already nervous. A lot of our families are often sitting at home just waiting for that phone call from school or from their teachers or daycare or wherever they may be, just waiting for that other shoe to drop. And so one thing we can keep in mind as educators is that behavior is communication. And there is no such thing as a bad kid. They're kids, right? They're children. We are the adults here. And what we need to remember is that the way that they're trying to communicate something they can't verbally communicate. So are there sensory sensitivities that we're missing? The best thing we can do is think about how we can help. Working through our unconscious bias that we inherently have of, oh, that kid is such a brat, or those parents need to do better, or whatever. Because that's, to be honest, that was me for a long time until I understood this. So I'm just throwing that out there, like being vulnerable. And realize that parents are likely doing the best that they can and really could use your help. So the best way to do that is to create a connection, because connection is key to inclusion. And we'll talk further on that in a little bit. As a pre I wasn't a preacher.
No, you weren't. You were a teacher.
As a teacher, prior to having James, I hate to admit that I wasn't the best teacher to all students. Neither of us were, right?
Well, no, I'm just kidding.
Don't get us wrong. We spent many 14-hour days, weekends, and evenings after those 14-hour days trying to perfect our passion. We loved creating challenging curriculum to keep our kids engaged. We loved all of our students, and we truly wanted what was best for them. We took all the professional development offered, attended many conferences. We thought we were doing a great job, and we even won a few awards. But looking back now, we realize where we went wrong. We had a different mindset. We didn't understand inclusion and how it could possibly work. I'm just one teacher, we think. How in the world am I supposed to reach those kids that are way above grade level while also reaching those kids that are so far below? How do I manage behaviors that I don't understand? And shamefully, we admit that our mindset was those kids belong in a different class. Look at that little face. You know you want him in your class, right? The passion was there. The love of kids and learning and teaching was definitely there, but our training wasn't, and our system wasn't set up to support us, even if it was. We were overwhelmed when we would find out 2 weeks before school started that we were having a kid with special needs. And we were scared as hell. I mean, how can they expect this of us? It just doesn't make sense for a GATE student to be in the same class as a student with Down syndrome. They're so different. But now we ask the question, are they really? Let's be honest. All kids are different. All people are different. I don't believe there is another person on earth with the exact same strengths and challenges that you have or I have. There is no normal. It's a myth we need to dispel to be able to reach all of our students, because it is possible.
It's possible to reach a multitude of learners when we're able to figure out what motivates them and their learning style. So this can really seem like an overwhelming task when you have 20 students, let alone in the middle school land, 180 or even more in high school. So, however, if teachers are appropriately trained and teach our ever-evolving neurodiverse population, success will be found for them and their neurotypical peers.
So our friend Shelley Moore talks about universal design for learning. So let's hope this works.
Hi, my name is Shelley Moore.
Can everybody
and I'm
hear
a
it?
third-year
Someone give me a
PhD
thumbs up.
student at the University of British Columbia in Vancouver. As Canadians, we have a reputation for finding and embracing the strength in our diversity. This value, however, hasn't been reflected in our classrooms, which still segregate students by ability, especially students with developmental disabilities. There's a gap in our understanding about what we know inclusive education to be philosophically versus what we understand and the importance of understanding inclusion in our practice. This is the question I'm trying to answer in my research, is how can we find the value in the day-to-day practice in our classrooms in terms of inclusive education? So how am I going to explain this to you? Now I can sit here and try and describe this, or we could have a little bit more fun. Why don't we go bowling? So let's talk about bowling. You have 10 pins, you have 2 balls, and you have a lane. The goal is to knock down as many pins as you can. But if you don't get them all, it's okay because you have another chance. But when I bowl and roll the ball down the middle and I don't knock them all down, what often ends up happening to me is that there's 2 pins left standing on either end and they stare at you. It's the 7-10 split and it's the hardest shot in bowling. How is bowling like teaching? The ball was the lesson, the pins are the kids. We aim for the middle, we do the best we can. The pins that are left standing, we often have another chance to kind of get to them. But at the end of the day, those 2 pins that are staring, looking at you are kids who need the most support and are kids who need the most challenge. So we end up choosing one and the other one is left standing. I just took all the fun out of bowling. Now, I don't know how many times you've watched professional bowling, but I spent an afternoon watching professional bowling. And let me tell you, there was not one bowler who rolled that ball down the middle of the lane. They throw the ball down the lane at a curve. And I was actually really curious about this, so I called up a professional bowler. He was so excited. I don't think he gets a lot of calls about education. He said the reason why the ball has to enter at a curve is because you will knock down more pins and create a bigger domino effect if you enter at that angle. But in order to do that, you have to change your aim. In order to knock down the most pins with one shot, he aims for the pins that are the hardest to hit. Now let's just let this sink in for a second. We are taught to teach the head pins. We are not taught to teach the kids who are the furthest and the hardest to get to, the kids with autism, the kids with Down syndrome. The part that's critical here, and it really aligns with universal design for learning, is that so often the supports that we design for those kids on the outside of the lane are actually supports that all of the kids need. This is the part we need to understand if inclusive education is going to move forward in Canada. How can we find this value of diversity in our classrooms between the students? This is not just important for the outside pins, but it's critical for every single one of us. And just think, all we need to do is change our aim. Look how bowling changed education.
So we love that conversation, that strengthen our diversity and changing our aim, because how quickly and easily that can make our teaching jobs so much more fun, to not have to grade 180 essays, right?
So as parents, we know that school is generally the only place that our kids are mandated to be without our direct supervision, and therefore it's often the only place our kids can go. So as we advocate for a culture of belonging, the first and most important thing we need to understand is that our kids are just kids. So next, we want to briefly talk about a best practice in education that makes meaningful inclusion possible.
And this picture right here was drawn of my friend who has a daughter with Down syndrome. Her other daughter drew the picture. Can you tell which one is which? No, because they're both just kids, and that's what kids see until we teach them otherwise. As educators, we loved each and every one of our students, but we didn't have these skills. We desperately wanted success, but we didn't know how to attain it. We didn't realize when we got the news that a child had autism, it wasn't a one-size-fits-all approach. Regardless of diagnosis or not, each and every child is unique. Each and every child learns differently. So you got to understand their unique learning profile, which can be difficult when you have so many students. And this is why using a universal design for learning approach is vital. It makes the job easier and so much more fun.
Tell them the curb cutout.
Okay, the
It's
curb
her
cutouts.
favorite. It's her favorite.
It is. It's a great analogy. She's
go.
giving me a hard time. I don't know. The curb cutout analogy is one that really got my wheels turning. So on any given sidewalk nowadays, you'll see these curb cutouts, right? And they were invented for people in wheelchairs to allow access to our community. As wonderful as that is, who else do they help? Right? People with strollers, people with luggage, runners, skateboarders, joggers, people on bicycles. The list is endless. This simple modification that allowed access for people in wheelchairs in our community in turn helped so many others. And this is just the same as in workplace and in life and the school classroom, right? How one accommodation for someone can easily translate into helping so many others. Regardless of diagnosis or not, we all learn in different. We all learn in different ways. So why wouldn't we try and accommodate all of those different learning styles? When I brought my son into TK, and again in fourth grade, actually every grade thus far has been amazing with him. And I talked about the different accommodations that he might need and different supports he might need in order to access education, like visuals, a time timer, a sturdier stool for toileting. The teacher said, oh, all kids would love that, right? Just further proving that when you have supports for one, it can really benefit all students in various ways. And we're not saying that you have to change your entire curriculum right now, but rather start adding alternate seating for part of a day. Add visuals to one of your lessons. As the days and months and years go on, adding a little each time creates a ripple effect that can help you to be able to reach each unique student where they're at. And you are probably already doing some of this, right? But if you are just aware of it, you can continue to do this work, this incremental work. In the last few years since having our kids, we've had a variety of disabilities in our classrooms. And having our own kids with disabilities has taught us that there are so much more to kids than just their diagnosis. It's taught us to look past our unconscious bias and get to know the actual kid below that label that is hanging over them and the flag in their cume saying that there's something wrong, right? Getting to know each and every child can help on more than an academic model can help in a variety of ways. One, and most importantly, it helps you create a connection with them. And creating a connection lets students know that you care about them. And when they know that you care, not only will they trust you and they will try harder, but they'll do their very best work for you, right? Connection is key to inclusion. And second, it lets you know how they learn, which helps set you up for universal design for learning.
So Universal Design for Learning, rather UDL, is based on 3 principles. 1, providing multiple means of engagement, meaning stimulating a student's interest and motivation. 2, providing multiple means of representation, meaning presenting the content in different ways, such as visually, orally, etc. And 3, providing multiple means of action and expression, giving students different ways to express what they know. So prior to having our kids, we already unknowingly did a lot of these things, as we're sure many of you as teachers already do as well.
I've said it before, but I'm gonna say it again. Connection is key to inclusion. And when someone doesn't feel like they belong, it's really hard to be trusting and be able to make progress in life. To create a community, we must push past our feelings of discomfort and fear and get to know the actual human beings that we perceive to be so vastly different from us. There's this story that I have of one of our families who went on a field trip. And the girl had seizures. So she used a walker and she was non-speaking. She did drool a little bit. She didn't really make a lot of eye contact. But on that field trip, not one family spoke to, interacted with, or even looked at them. They felt like they were invisible, like they didn't belong. Each person on that field trip probably thought, oh, someone else is going to do it, right? But no one did. Creating community is as easy as just smiling and saying hi to someone, even if they don't say hi back. And we realize that it can be scary, uncomfortable, but we promise it does get easier with each interaction.
We know that you're often the adults in a school setting who are in a place to facilitate interactions between students with disabilities or differences and other students. We have so many examples here, questions that we've been asked when we are presenting about acceptance and inclusion at elementary schools, middle schools, and high schools. And answering these questions can sometimes feel awkward or hard, but the way you answer them from your students is if they're posed to you, right, and especially in front of our kids or kids like ours, can really be impactful. So let's talk about how we would answer some of those questions. So some of these questions that we take a look are, why can't they talk? Why do they look different? Why are they doing that thing with their hands, right? Or making that sound? What is it that's around their neck that they're chewing on, and so forth? So these are some of the questions that we've been asked. And how do you think you would answer them?
And if you are concerned or have questions like these your own, feel free to put them in the chat. And when we get finished here, we will help you to find a good answer for those. Not depending on age, like we can do all the ages for these. So we also want to remind you that you don't have to do this alone. And we're not suggesting that we throw an entire special day class into your classroom, tomorrow. But what we do let you know is that you can become community partners with families, with the administrators, with the special education educators, behavior specialists, psychs, OTs, paraeducators, and so many more. If we're being honest, we are still learning how each of these professionals can help serve our kids, but they are there to support you. So don't be afraid to ask for help.
Often you're the first early childhood professionals or just professionals. It depends. It does not matter what grade level that you teach or what part of education you're a part of, but you might be the first to notice developmental difference or support need of a child or in a child. So here's some tips and reminders for navigating that. So times to have tough conversations with loved ones. Think about, the drop off and pickup time might be pretty hectic. It's not the time to say, hey, I'm seeing something. Not the time. We're all a little too busy. Privacy. I always put up a barrier when somebody was first talking about August, and I would have preferred if things were done in a quiet and private place. Start with a positive because our kids are kids, and we know there's great things about all human beings. Explain your observations neutrally and with clarity. We're not doctors, right? And even doctors sometimes need some help with this as well. Give some examples of those items that you're seeing and do that with neutrality. Avoid jargon and be respectful of feelings, right? That parents are going to have. It can be something that you feel anxious or scared or confused about. And really also connecting with that family is the key to inclusion.
And one of the things I like to know, we always, when we do these presentations, we have a Facebook group of over 1,300 families who have kids with loved ones with disabilities. And we always ask them, what do you want these people to know that we're going to be presenting to? And one of the major things that it feels so scary to us, but as a first-time parent, Harmony, even with her, Dead Poet Society learning, she was a first-time parent, and you don't know what to expect when you have a kid. You don't know what's normal and what's not normal, right? You don't know when a child is falling behind. You just love them. You just see them as your child. And so oftentimes being the person who says, I'm noticing some differences, but you're not alone in this, right? We're about to go on a journey to discover why, Harmony is doing X, Y, and Z. And you're gonna fill out some paperwork and I'm gonna be there with you, right? Being that support system for a family so they know that you're not just throwing them to the wolves, it means a lot.
And sometimes when you're talking about like the world of assessment or what that looks like, I often say to families like, you know what? Can't crack open that head because I don't know, but we're going to do some tests and we're going to take some assessments with some really great people who know how to do this with your child. And we're going to learn a little bit more about, what's going on inside of there. And then we're going to come together and talk about it as a team. I'm still going to be right there with you. And we're going to make all these decisions and choices together. And the biggest thing is knowing that you're not just dropping information and abandoning people, because really connection, not only for kids, but for adults are just as important.
I mean, I feel like someone once said connection is key to inclusion. I'm just gonna throw that out there. Okay,
so this is our framework for how we ask school age students to act. So how do we interact with people who are different from us? So here are some things to keep in mind when interacting with other people. So first, we want you to know that it's okay to notice differences. We know that our kids are different.
Yep.
And we really appreciate questions rather than wondering. If you're wondering, please don't stare. It just makes everything feel more strange. Just show that you care. So be the one is what we say. And we say to just say hi and introduce yourself. One of my favorites is when I was at the park and August was doing some things on the sand, and I just had a dad who just asked me some questions and I got to answer, and we ended up getting into a really positive space with it, and I really, really appreciated it. So be the one and find some similarities, and maybe you both like to go down the slide. That's what was happening with my son with the truck and some sand. What if the person can't or does not speak back to you? You can ask those questions because that's okay. Usually they have someone there who can help them, or even like my son, he has a device that can support him. And even if not, we're certain that they can appreciate just being noticed, and we all like to feel like we belong. So finally, being the one, which is our motto, it really is to stand up. But so the last thing is to if you see someone being left out or bullied, invite them to join. From the field trip experience that Larkin talked about to even the simple things. Sometimes kids can ask other kids to repeat things if they're limited in speaking, and we know that that's not right. But stand up and say something, and then also invite kids to join you or other groups, because you can be the one to make somebody's day.
So to sum it all up, we're all different, and that's rad. And that sentiment does not change with disability label. Don't be scared to ask for help with behavior. We all know that behavior is communication now, right? And so if you're having trouble figuring out what a student is trying to communicate, partner with all of those different people we listed below. We aren't ever going to change behaviors if we aren't able to understand what the child is trying to communicate. So we are here for all diagnosis, disabilities, medical complexities, and we hope to create a more inclusive and supported community. One of the things that you must have in common in order to be here at 7:54 at nighttime is that you also strive to create that in your classroom, and create a community of belonging where you are. And so feel free to reach out. We also would love to answer any questions that you have. We have about 6 minutes left. And so any questions that you have, as I stated earlier, nothing is off the table, so long as it comes from a kind heart. I see that someone would love to hear some of the appropriate answers to those questions. So I'll go back to those questions. One of the things that we talk about often is why can't they talk? And, if you think about it, talking is, we make it look easy. But if you think about it, talking is actually really difficult. Your brain has to send a signal down to your belly to tell your diaphragm to push up air through your vocal cords that have to move correctly. And then all of your mouth muscles and your tongue muscles all have to move in sync to make certain sounds like we do. It's actually quite astonishing that we can talk the way we do. Of course, we don't get into that much detail with little kids. We just say, talking is hard sometimes, but we all have different ways of communicating. Look, she's smiling. What do you think? How do you think she's feeling right now? Right? And we help give them some tools to help decode how people are feeling. Another one that we get, why are they weird? Why are they acting weird? What's wrong with them? We never want to shame kids. Kids are doing the best that they can. We believe that we always, again, we presume positive intent, right? So instead of saying, oh, shh, we don't say that, just shh. We say, oh, you're asking why Johnny is flapping his hands like that. I'm not sure. Why don't we go up and say hi to Johnny and meet Johnny, right? We introduce them and we rephrase the question and reframe it so that they understand how to ask questions and how to ask what they're wondering.
Yep, the Chewy necklace. Well,
Well, James has
James
a
has. I was like, I was
keep on talking.
I was going to do the talking, but he has a Chewy necklace. So
all right.
Talk about
so
it.
You can see the Chewy necklace hanging right here on his neck. So Chewy necklaces are for a variety of reasons. For James, he's 10 years old and he only eats pureed foods. So he doesn't get that sensation of eating, like the garlic bread we just had. Delicious. But he doesn't get that sensation of the crunch and all of those sensory sensitivities in his mouth. So a Chewy helps him to get that. It also helps him because I don't know if you've ever heard somebody grind their teeth, but it's the most horrible word sound in the whole wide world. And so this helps them to be able to chew on something to get that need for moving their jaw and clenching their jaw out.
Well, I like this. There's a comment that if another parent is wanting to know why a child is, all I say is everyone is working on something. Excellent. And if you want to know about your child, we can talk about what he is working on. So that's nice. So you're taking it to what they're working on and not specifically about that child. So that's nice.
And it's true. I mean, Harmony and I have very different strengths and challenges. And we all need different challenges. We all need different strengths in this world. Like I can speak in front of, 750 people, no problem. But you don't want me doing your taxes. Trust me. I don't want me doing my taxes, if I'm being honest. But we all have different strengths. We all look different. We're all different. And that's what makes our world a beautiful place. And that is the sentiment we want to teach our children instead of that unwritten disability curriculum we teach when we think those kids belong over there in that portable on the side of the classroom. So we are all different, and that is rad. And that's another one of our presentations, the title. So here's our website and our social media, and you can email us at any time. Feel free to reach out. We do school presentations, we do travel. So we would love to see you sometime actually in person. Thank you so much for joining our session tonight. And I hope you enjoyed yourselves and learned some things, and enjoy the rest of your conference. Okay.
We'll take the thank yous off.
Yes, you're welcome. All right. Thank you all. That's what I think